Hey, 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 everybody. Hope all is well and everyone is here ready for Asking Agents. Yes, we are super excited and got someone kind of sending me a text message there. But I'm getting ready to introduce my guest for tonight, Miss Cheryl Sain. I am super, super excited to have her. And I'm going to go on and I'm going to bring Cheryl on. You guys can enjoy this live. It says that we are adding her now, so she is going to connect. Yes! Hey,
I can't
Cheryl,
wait to
how
get
are
it. Hey,
you?
Nicole, how are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for joining us for tonight's live of Ask an Agent. I'm super excited to have you. Are you excited to be here?
Oh my gosh, yes, I've got butterflies. I'm just
Well,
glad we
I
got the
hope those
technical part figured out.
exactly. And you're looking fabulous. I'm loving the hair, girl. Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
You are serving tonight. I love it.
Thank you.
So just a little bit about what's going on tonight. We are having our weekly feature of Ask an Agent, and we have with us Miss Cheryl Sain. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
That's correct, Cheryl saying yes.
That's right. And Cheryl is the author of 10 Things You Need to Know About Land. You can get her book at Amazon.com. And you can always make arrangements with Cheryl for her to autograph your copy.
Mhm.
I've got my book, and I'm super excited about the book. It has so much great information down to an actual checklist that you can use to help you when buying land. And so the last couple of weeks, Cheryl, just to bring you up to date and our viewers, we have been talking about things that we need to do when we're purchasing homes, things that we need to do when we're going to sell a home. And we've even answered some questions from people who wanted to be an agent. But what I have found out, Cheryl, is that while I'm doing these live sessions and people are asking me the wonderful questions that they're asking, a lot of people are buyers and they're getting stuck in multiple offer situations. And
Yeah.
because they're getting stuck in multiple offer situations, they feel the need to turn to land. And so, Cheryl, that's why I've brought you on, because you are my land expert. You're helping me with a few deals right now, and I appreciate all that you do. You do it in a selfless way, and that is why I wanted to feature you on tonight so that we could get any questions answered that we have regarding land, whether you're someone who's trying to buy land, whether you're someone who's trying to sell land. Cheryl and I are here to answer the questions. But before we get into the questions, Cheryl, I'd like for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I've been in real estate for 20 years. And when I started in the industry, I had three young children. And I started out doing houses. And if you can imagine hauling your kids around with showing houses, it was quite challenging. And so I accidentally ran across a land listing for someone that and put this on, did the listing. It sold really quick. And I thought, this might be something I can do more of. So I started researching to find vacant land and called up the owners to see if they'd be interested in listing it with me, and they did. So went into a broker's class and ran into another female who was selling land, and she became my mentor. And we actually still do land deals today together. But that has just turned into a passion of mine because over the years, I realized a lot of residential agents do the same thing. They run across a land listing and they list it, and they really don't know what they've got and didn't know where to find the information. And I would spend hours on the phone explaining to them what they needed to do to put more value on the land and have more information available to a potential buyer. And so after doing this for many, many years, I thought, why is there no classes to teach
I
residential?
know, right?
Yeah. So I started asking around, and I found out a lot of the residential agents, when they came across a piece of property and they would take it to their BIC, the BIC would say, oh, it's too complicated. You don't want to mess with it. Give it to the land guy in the office and let them handle it and do a referral. And so you keep doing that and doing that. You really never learn So, and it's not that complicated once you get a few under your belt. It's just a little bit more work, or you just really just need to know where to go find the information. Just like a house, there are certain places you go to find certain information about a house. It's the same thing for land. Fix that phone. So I love helping people, especially female agents who are curious about it or want to learn. I had a lady from Arizona call me a couple weeks ago, and she got a hold of my book through another friend, and she'd never done a land deal, and she had an opportunity for 92 acres. So I helped her research it. Yeah, I helped her research it on, it was way out west somewhere. I helped research it on the GIS and showed her, here are your parcels, and this is what you do, and this is what you say. And she was really excited because she had no idea that it was going to be that that easy once she learned what to do. So that's it. And I've been doing it for, like I said, 20 years. Love helping people, but I wanted to educate the residential agent community and really anyone. I have found the more you educate your clients on land when they're selling it, they trust you, and they want to use you because you've built that trust. You've taken the time to educate them instead of saying, oh, I'll handle it all, I'll handle it all. So that's, I hope that wasn't too much information.
No, it wasn't too much. This is excellent info. And like I said, for those of you that are just joining us, we do have the great, the wonderful Miss Cheryl Sain on the line with us, author and realtor. She's an author of a book called 10 Things You Need to Know when it comes to land. And so, like I said, she's working with me with a couple of people that I'm working with. And so I said, hey, you know what? People need this info. People have questions. And so, Cheryl, we're going to go ahead and get into our questions. And so
Okay.
I've actually gone under contract for a couple pieces of land that require a septic. Okay. And the first thing that I always say is, well, we need to have a survey. If the listing agent doesn't have a survey, we have to have a survey. Am I telling them correctly?
Absolutely. Even if it's a recent survey, I would still tell my clients to get it. I had a story in the book, real quick. My daughter was being babysat by this lady, and she said, hey, I know you're a real estate agent. Can you list our lot? And I said, sure. So she said, here's the survey. Just use that. And I'm like, okay. So I called up one of my builders that I've known, and the lot was in a great location here in Union County, and he immediately put it under contract. And he went down to the courthouse with the survey that I had given him, that she had given me, that her seller had given her. And so he gets down to the courthouse and he's comparing it to the one that was registered at the courthouse. And he called me up and said, hey, you know, what's going on here? And I said, what do you mean? Turns out someone had whited out the middle of the survey where it said debris burial pit. So it was a place back in the old days, they would dig big holes in a lot, and they would put all the dead branches and stumps and everything in there, and that would just be the last lot that anybody ever did anything with. It's usually the worst lot. And so he had to get a big machine out there and do borings in the ground to find where this burial pit was for debris. And she was out there praying over the lot every day, and they never found anything, which is so crazy. They ended up using the lot, built a beautiful house on it. They just set it to the side from where they thought the debris pit was. But my point with that whole story is that it is so imperative that you get a survey, even if they've got a recent one. Unless you were there when they were doing it, or you know the land really well, I would get a survey for every property if you can.
Yeah.
Just so you know where the easements and corners and everything are.
Exactly. Easements, corners,
Mm-hmm.
the power line easements as well. If there's a creek running through there, the survey is going to tell you that as well. I've got some clients who are building or who are purchasing a lot up near the lake. And, you know, when we went out there and walked the lot, we could not see a lake. Not realizing though that it's just during the time of year the lake recedes back, of course, when it comes back in. And so I told them, hey, we got to get a survey. We got to make sure that these boundary lines are correct, because what you don't want to do is work off the wrong survey. Your tide, or your water comes in, and now you're in trouble.
Right, that's right. Another thing too is people may not realize is that the property lines go to the center of a water feature. Like if you've got two pieces of property and there's a creek in the middle of them, and the property goes to the center of the water line there, over the years, when you have a lot of storms and rain and everything, it could redirect the path of that creek. And then if you don't get a survey, you won't really know what the exact amount of land is. You could have more land or you could have less, depending on the path that new cut creek took. So it's very important, especially when you have water features on a piece of property. So you're right. You're absolutely right.
What is something else that we should look for? We know to get a survey, especially when whether we're doing septic or not. I just used that example with a septic because in order for you to have your perk test done, they want to see the boundary lines staked out already.
Right.
And so, but what is something else that we should look out for?
Well, when you're doing, you mentioned septic. If you're doing a septic tank on a piece of property, for example, in the county that I'm in, for every for every field, when you have a septic system, you have lines that go out from the drain field, and it could take up like a quarter of an acre, and the county often now requires you to have that same amount of land for a repair field. So if you've got a lot and there's only enough room on the lot for the initial septic system and the repair field, then there's not going to be enough room to do like a pool or any additional construction or anything like that. So those are things you want to take in consideration with a lot and the size of the lot if it's a septic system that's involved. So that's another thing you want to just take into consideration. I always like to do a survey too, because if the neighbors have a fence up, their fence may encroach on your property and you don't know it. And you think it's okay right now, but if it's 6 or 8 or 10 inches, I mean, that's a lot of property line that you own that someone else is using. So
It's a good thing that you said that, Cheryl, about the fence, because with my first house, it came with a survey, and actually the property line, there's like it was a hill, and so the property line went up on the hill, then curved back around to the other side. But when I did my fence, I just did my fence on one side, the side that was like the cliff drop off, that literally I would have had a heart attack if a child had fell off that cliff. So I'm like, fence on this side. The other hill, if the hill was going up, not down, so I didn't put a fence on that side. Mm-hmm. But I did notice years later when I sold the house and I went back, from time to time, I still go back to that neighborhood. And so when I went back to the neighborhood to view, they had finished the fence on the other sides, but did not take the fence up onto the hill, which was still their property line. Mm-hmm. And so when you're going to buy that property, you want to make sure that you know that new fence that's there is cutting off part of your land, and that your neighbor could think that it's really theirs and it's not.
That is so true. Yeah, and neighbors go to court over a fence. I've heard of that many times. Or there may be some underground lines that are on your property that are not supposed to be from the neighbors if they've got a lot of extensive exterior pools and irrigation and all this stuff. You really just need to know what's on your property or not. So.
And I know we're just talking about land, but surveys for my audience is good for you to have, period. I once had a young lady who was purchasing some property. We went out, we looked at it, and it was a property that the seller had expanded and added a room onto. Had all this land in the back and on the side and in the front. And she was like, do I get all this land? And this tip for agents, your answer is always, we have to get a survey to find out. Okay.
Oh, that's perfect answer. Yes, yeah. That's actually the largest chapter in my book is surveys. I know you know Bill Gallagher. I sent my book to have him review it, and the chapter that he wanted the most expansion on was the survey chapter. So that got expanded greatly due to Bill Gallagher. So thank him for that. But it's a lot of. I know, and I'm so glad he's teaching again. He's back teaching.
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
I'm excited about that. So I'm actually ready for class.
No worries. But we ended up getting the survey and finding out that all that land that she saw was not hers. And in fact, the expansion that the sellers did on the house to build the house out and add that extra room encroached onto
Oh,
someone else's land,
oh
literally
wow.
by 6 inches.
What did
Yeah.
they do? I don't.
Well, they
I'd like
couldn't
to.
give clear title, so we ended up having to terminate after waiting 2 months for them to try to find the sellers of that land that had just been sitting there for years. That the people were literally cutting it and taking care of it, acting like it was theirs, and it was not. And so,
That is
luckily,
so awesome.
the sellers did right. They gave my buyer back her earnest money and her due diligence, which for
Mhm.
those watching, you know that in North Carolina, you don't get your due diligence back unless there's been some type of misrepresentation. So they didn't know that that issue happened until we got the survey done, but they were gracious enough to still give her back her due diligence fee because
You were so smart to encourage that.
mm-hmm.
I'm not kidding.
you know, I'm always thinking of ways, okay, to help somebody. And so, Cheryl, we're really, like I said, excited to have you. You said your largest section of your book is on surveys. What's your favorite section in the book?
Oh gosh, no one's asked me that before. I will tell you some things that I really like about the book
Okay.
that I think most people would. It's each corner of the chapters has a different icon, and each icon is related. Like for example, I've got this for Dee's chapter. I don't even know if you can see this or not. Like for water and sewer, I got the little sewer grate. So if you're just wanting to flip through it and you don't remember which chapter, you can recognize the icon and know you're in the correct chapter to look for this. So that's one thing that I added that I was really excited about. I've got some excellent quotes in here. Probably the stories are my favorite. The quotes and the stories are my favorite because the stories are true, and they're local. A lot of them are local stories or things that happened to me. Um, I've gotten a lot of great feedback so far from people that have read it and purchased it, and that's exciting to help because it's my way of giving back to the real estate community. Instead of having to sit there and explain everything when I get a phone call, I'm just like, guess what? Go get a book. You know, it's got everything in it. So it's been really exciting so far. Some excellent feedback on it, and I'm looking for stories when I do update it. You know, in a couple of years. So keep your stories in the back of your mind and send them to me.
All right, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah,
So
keep
we
staying
talked
happy.
a little bit about ensuring that we had a survey. That's our number one thing that we want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure when we're purchasing a land. But a lot of times people say, "Well, Nicole, let's go out and let's look at the land and look at the topography and see what's going on." And I'll get out there with them and I'll walk the land and I'm gonna tell you, honey, I'm not a country girl, okay? I'll still try to get out there and walk that land with them and make it do
Yeah,
what I can to
I
help my
do.
buyers, but that topography and that terrain can be very difficult when you're trying to help a person decide if this is going to be a good lot for them. What are some tips or trades or things that you've done to ensure that you're giving that good info for your client?
Well, you definitely want to walk the lot if you can, especially if it's not a very large one. I've been on large tracks where we actually take four-wheelers out with the
Yes, I
buyers
have
and ride
to.
around and look at it. But always carry a stick so you can get the snakes away. And I don't know if you run across any or not, but I have. It's fun. So I definitely say when you're trying to sell a lot, if it's a lot and it's walkable, take your client and go walk with them on the lot because you may find, oh gosh, we've seen like old cars and
Mhm.
trash dumped out and things like that that the seller didn't necessarily know was on the property. Or if it's an inherited piece of property and someone's selling it, they may not have a clue what's on the property. They're just wanting to get rid of it. So you want to check the topography. There may be some ponds that you can't breach, or if it's a man-made pond and you want it there, that's one thing. But if you don't want it there, you got to find out through the municipality if you can breach the pond and get rid of the pond so you can have more buildable land and that sort of thing. But you definitely want to walk the property. If you can find the corners, get it surveyed, find the corners and walk it and let the client know and feel how big it is. There's tree saves you got to be careful of with municipalities. They will require you, if the tree is so large in diameter, you have to save it, or you have to replant something, that would take its place. So there's just a lot to consider with it, but it's not that hard. Once you've done it, you just start remembering these things, and a checklist helps a lot. So, but
And what are some
topography
things
is,
that we should have in our checklist?
pardon me?
What are some things that we should have in our checklist?
Oh, well, it's in my book. You definitely want to go, and I do have the checklist in the back of the book. I've actually got 2 of them. Hold on just a second. I go over the 10 things first of all, which I'll read those to you, which won't take but a second. But the 10 things you need to know checklist is the parcel ID number, the owner's name and address,
Yep.
discovering land conditions, the parcel deed, the survey, parcel zoning and density, which that's real important, soils, water and sewer, well and septic, community restrictions, HOA and CCRs, and the importance of land locations. But getting back to the water and sewer and well and septic and the soils, first of all, if you've got a piece of property that you want to build a house on and there's no county water and sewer nearby, you're going to have to do a septic and a well. Well, if the soils are bad, you may not be able to build on that property. And I go over that in the soils chapter, because there are bad soils that you can't build anything on, or you have to build, you have to put piles in the ground and build it up, like at the beach, when the houses are up. So it's real important to have the soils tested. You have to have them tested anyway to see if it's going to perk. But that'll give you a good indication. You may have a large tract of land and the soils are horrible almost everywhere, but you may have one little area on the property that you can build the house. And people do that. They do it all the time. So
All the time.
yeah, soils are very important, and people don't take that into consideration a lot when they're looking. People buy property without having anything done, no testing, no perking and anything, and they're, because they think they got a good deal, but they just don't know. And that was another reason I wrote the book. You really need to take all these things in consideration when you're buying land. It doesn't matter how good the price seems. If you can't use the land, you're just going to be paying taxes on something you can't use. So
That part. Exactly.
yeah.
And we want to make sure that we don't lead our clients astray. We want to make sure that they have all the info that they can. One of the things that you talked about in your checklist was knowing the zoning and the density. I actually had a conference call earlier today with a client and the site engineer and the builder on some land where the property line, city sewer runs at the front of the property line, but the property itself actually sits in the county.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we were trying, we had the assessment done and we're trying to figure out like, hey, are we going to be able to tap into the city's lines even though we're in the county, and the property has to go through the process of being annexed into the city to be counted in the city in order to tap into those lines. Well, all right, if we fail in that process, what's next? Like, how far are we away from any county sewer lines that are running out there, if there are? And if no county sewer lines are running after, what is the septic going to look like? And it was a lot in that call that we had earlier today, which is why I wanted you to touch a little bit on some of the zoning restrictions that you've seen that people need to deal with.
Yeah, also too, while we're talking about that, I wanted to mention capacity. If you are able to tap into a sewer line, you need to make sure there's capacity available. And by capacity, I mean, is there enough capacity available through the municipality to allow that house to tap onto it? We are experiencing no sewer in Union County right now. They're not approving any more subdivisions in Union County right now because we have run out of sewer capacity down here, and this is not the first time. So zoning, let's talk about zoning for a moment. Each property has a zoning, and it could be agricultural, industrial, commercial, residential, high density residential. There's all kind of different zonings, and most municipalities will do a plan, and they do a plan for future development for that county. It's like they have it's kind of like a dream sheet for the county. This is how we want to see the county grow. And so they will assign a zoning, say, we want all the houses over in this area, but we want commercial in downtown area. But over here, we want to leave this open for industrial, and let's, push out everything else for agriculture. So depending on the zoning that you are currently in, which may be a residential, you could look on the municipality's plan, their future plan use, and see what they would like to see on your property. And if your property is zoned for future commercial, then that property is more valuable than selling it as residential right now, depending on if you can get a higher density. And with density, I mean, if you are, if you've got an acre of land and your density is one house for that acre, that means you can only put one house on that acre of land. But if it's a higher density, say an R4, which typically stands for residential 4 to the acre, then you can get 4 houses on that, which makes it more valuable because a builder can go in there and make more money by building more homes. So unless it's on sewer, then you're probably not going to be able to do that. I'm not sure septic, yeah. But if it's on sewer, it's good. So that's what zoning is. It's important to find what the current zoning is and the future potential zoning for a piece of property when you're selling it.
And here's the thing, people, just because it's zoned one way doesn't mean that you can't petition to have the zoning changed. So maybe it's zoned R1, like she said, which was 1 house per acre, and you need it to be switched to an R4. All the zoning commission is going to want to see is your plans and your, I guess, reasoning, if you will, on why it's necessary to change the zoning. And then, of course, it's a lot. I'm saying it in simple terms, but it's a lot more paperwork
that's good. And it's called a rezoning. And when you go through that process, they will notify the neighbors around you, let them have their moments in front of the why they want it and why they're for it, or why they're not and why they don't. So it could get, turned down because, enough people didn't want it, but enough people want it or don't really care, it'll probably get passed. So, and especially if it's good for the community. And
especially if it's good for the community. And so they'll take into things like, what if the nearest subdivision is an owner occupied subdivision and now you're trying to come in and put in a rental community,
and that's happening a lot right now. I mean, they're actually building entire rental communities in single family houses now. There's several companies here in Charlotte doing it.
Yeah. Like we already don't have a housing shortage for the people that want to buy.
Yeah,
they are. You're absolutely right.
Now. Well, I think because of the downturn way back when, if you were an agent, you can't forget that, because I went like 5 years without a closing. So everyone was renting them because they were losing their homes. So there was, everything was at capacity. So they saw that opportunity, and then each year there's more people moving into Charlotte. Into Charlotte. So if they don't have a house to buy, they're just going to rent, and it's gonna stay that way, I guess. So they keep buying like crazy as much land as they can find. So especially if it's already zoned.
Exactly. So once you've gone through that zoning process, though, then you're able to build what it is that you want to build. And by then you've already got your plans and everything laid out. But if zoning says no, if enough neighbors, put up a good fight and they say no, understand that going through that process, you are already out some money that you don't get back.
Yeah, that just happened to us last week. We had worked on a project for 2 years. And there was enough. Well, actually, they turned it down because of the sewer, ultimately, because they did not have enough sewer to pass the neighborhood, so there was nothing to do. We've been working on it for 2 years. So land deals, the larger land deals, do take a long time if you're starting from scratch. But while that process is cooking along, be doing other real estate. Just get other deals in the hopper, because once you get it under contract, really the buyer's doing all the work. So it's not that complicated. I'm going to hopefully soon do a comparison chart on the difference between what you have to look for putting a house on the market compared to what you have to look for putting land on the market, so that people can kind of do a comparison and see that it's not that complicated. It's just most people don't know where to go look for the information. So that's what I'm here for.
Now, we've done a lot of talking about from the perspective of buying land, but what if I'm a seller and I'm trying to list my land? What's some things I need to make sure that my agent knows, or if we're talking to agents, things that you need to make sure you get from your seller regarding the land?
Well, that's a great question, because a lot of times there's more than one seller, and that's what you need to find out initially. How many people are in charge of selling this property? Because if you're talking to one person and it turns out that's a sibling of 3 or 4 that inherited the property, you got to find out who's in charge, or do they all have to sign this off? So that's one thing. Another one is if they've got a recent survey. Are there any issues or easements on the property that are not obvious? You need to know that. Who all is involved in, we've had properties where it was so complicated, where there was like 30 family members from an inherited piece of property. And they were all over the United States. And then, you know,
nobody uses a computer either.
No, I know. And, you know, finding the right people to talk to is imperative. But when you've got a seller that's wanting to sell their property, I would have a little checklist of things that, and this checklist is great in the book. Do you have these things? Do you have a current survey? Can you tell me about the easement? Who all is responsible for selling this property? Who has to sign the listing agreement, and who has to sell the purchase agreement? And and make sure that they understand, if it's a large tract of land and a developer or builder comes in, it's going to take at least a year for that property to get through all the approvals and everything. And explain that to them so that they don't think that they're going to sell it and close in 30 days. So it just won't happen. So those are important things initially, and anything that they can tell you about the property that they're willing to tell you.
In your experience, have you had, in pertaining to large tracts of land, have you had issues where it was zoned maybe residential and they're actually trying to turn it commercial? Have you had like that be an issue? I know a lot of times I see the issues is more it's zoned commercial and now we're trying to make it residential.
Yeah, I see residential trying to go commercial all the time. And depending on what the overlay for the municipality has, or if they're in the middle of doing a new plan, they may consider that, depending on how the growth is in around that property. So yeah, that's not uncommon at all. So yeah. What else you got for me? Lay it on me, girl.
Girl, we got everything. We still got a whole nother 25 minutes of talking we got to do.
Oh, good.
So we've got a lot. But just for those that are joining in, I always like to kind of take a second and kind of recap where we're at. We're doing this Ask an Agent live, so that if you have questions, just put them in the chat. Ask an Agent doesn't work well if you're not asking your questions. So even if your question isn't specifically on land, we're still here to answer questions. We're both realtors. We're both real estate agents. And so we even if your question isn't specifically on land, you can still ask your questions. There are a lot of times people have questions about being an agent. And so I want to take a second right now, Cheryl, and just kind of focus from someone who's wanting to be an agent and they say, hey, listen, I want to specialize in X, Y, and Z. Why or why not would you suggest taking on land as their specialty?
Oh, I definitely would say at least have that in your back pocket. I think all agents, every house you sell, well, unless it's a big tower, sits on land. And you need to know what is on that land or under the ground. And that's why it's so important to get your surveys and do your research on the property. If you've got a property you're selling and it's out in the country somewhere, go see what the plans are, the future plans for the municipality. Is there a big road coming through there? Is there a plan for development coming through there? Is there some works in the progress already with surrounding property with the development? I mean, it's important to know when, I live on 9 acres out in the country, and just a stone's throw from here, they're getting ready to do a multifamily complex.
Mm.
And I'm way out. Well, at least I used to be way out in Wesley Chapel area. So it's very important to know about the land that a house sits on. If it's in a neighborhood, that's easy because that's all done. But if you do not have covenants or restrictions and you're not in a neighborhood and you're selling a house for someone, it is very important that you make sure they've got the survey, or if the buyer wants to get their own survey, which they should. But if they've got a current survey or one that's a few years old when they purchased the property, make sure you have that in your file and check the zoning, check the future zoning, and just get as much information about the property as you can, you know.
Yeah,
So,
and the city can give you all the master plan. They have
yes, it's
no problem
probably
doing it.
fine. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah,
times they just got it
it's
online.
because it's online, you can download it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a problem getting that master plan and
Mm-hmm.
taking a look at that and trying to see where that parcel of land fits into what you're trying to do. I have a young lady who's looking at some land, and in contacting the planning department, we finally got a response back. And when we got a response back, they sent us a copy of what the original site plan was for that area. Well, that's fantastic because that's what we're actually trying to do. And someone already submitted plans for it.
Oh, wow.
So
That's great. Well, and
yeah,
all those
it's great. It
plans,
takes out a lot of the legwork.
yes, those plans, a lot of times the future use plan for the municipality is color coded. And you can, like, if it's purple, they'll have, a diagram over here of what that is, and that'll have the zoning. The one thing I want to say is don't be afraid to call the municipalities. Don't be afraid to call the tax department or the deeds or the planning and zoning. Those people are so helpful. Even the GIS. If you can't figure out the GIS, because I use a lot of GISs in all of the counties around Mecklenburg County. I don't just work in one, and I work in South Carolina too. But all GISs have similarities, but I'll have to tell you, Mecklenburg County's Polaris 3G, best one I've ever used, hands down. Some of the other counties surrounding us are a little bit more complicated, and I still have to call them once in a while if I'm hung up and I can't get a layer to pull up that I want to. So don't be afraid to call these people. They're so helpful. They want to help you do it. They may have to get back to you a little bit later, but once you get that contact in a department, write that person's name down and put it in a file somewhere so that you can call them back and say, hey, you helped me with so-and-so a week or two ago. I got another issue I'd like, some insight on, and they're wonderful. I have never had a problem working with the municipality at all in any capacity.
And just a little extra note, if someone is helping you out time and time again, a nice little $5 Starbucks gift card goes a long way to thanking them for all the great advice that they're giving you.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a tidbit, agent to agent, to you agents out there, okay?
It does go a long way. I mean, just that little special, hey, thank you for helping me. Because we've gotten to be a selfish society and people are not as giving as they used to be.
Yeah, don't get me started, okay? That's why you're such a breath of fresh air. We took that class together. And someone else commented, I posted that, we were going to be doing this live tonight. And someone commented, oh my God, she's awesome. I had CE class with her. And I was like, I had class with her too. So Cheryl, you are out here making a name for yourself. And people are like, oh my God, I know her.
I love helping people. And I love hearing success stories too. And I meet people that I can't remember that I've helped years ago, and they're like, don't you remember you helped me? Blah. And I'm like, no, I can't remember, but I'm so glad I did. I'm glad I was able to help you.
And that's why I do these lives. I do these lives to give people the information to answer the questions so that they have, all of their questions answered. And that they get the info that they need, because I don't want people to feel like, number one, I give info because I love to help, okay? And there's no obligation to work with me because I helped you. And I try to make that clear.
Yeah, I'm not looking for anything.
Yeah.
I just want to.
I'm looking to make sure you get the best information, the right information, so you can make the best possible informed decision on what it is that you're trying to do, okay? Because um, everyone is not a good fit to work together.
No,
So I don't assume because you're asking me the question that it's going to work out for us. Okay. I give the info because I genuinely want to help. I genuinely want to make sure that you're getting your questions answered. And
oh,
Cheryl,
yeah,
I know you're the same way.
yeah, I feel that with you. And when you called me, I love it. I love people calling me, asking me questions. I don't know the answer to everything. I don't know the answer to a lot, but I do. If I can't give you the answer right then, or at least what I know, I will help you find the answer, or I will put you in the direction you need to go to get the answer. So, and this book is not about how to sell or how to buy. It's just where to find the information that you need to make an educated decision to buy or sell or list or, do whatever you want to invest. It's just to help you find that correct information to make a good decision for a transaction.
Absolutely. We do
So,
have a question in the chat here. It says, during such a volatile market, what is the best way to determine the best bang for your buck, especially with land? And then a follow-up question to that is, do you have any favorite apps that you use? Well, let me answer the question about apps that we use. We're real estate agents, so we're using our real estate agent tools. Okay,
that's true.
we're not using Zillow. We're using Realtor.com and Redfin and all those other third-party apps. We tie directly into the MLS, and from there we begin to do our research. But Cheryl, the question: what's the market is very volatile. It's sellers have the upper hand in most price points, right?
They do.
What do you consider is the best bang for your buck with land?
Well, that's a great question. I'm not quite sure how to answer that, but let me think about it. If you're going to buy land right now to build it, first of all, it's very expensive to build a house right now. I talked to some builders this week, and they're saying it's an extra like $26,000 per house for the materials, because lumber and everything has gone up.
Right.
So if you're going to build, I would first look for the location is of course the most pertinent thing to do. You want to build. Are you talking about building? Is that what they're talking about, or buying?
Yeah, so yeah, buying land, and they want to be able to build on that land. So how ensuring that you get the most bang for your buck with purchasing the land. And I think
Well,
that you're right on your answer that the number one key is the location.
mhm.
The land could be lower price because it's further out or it's in a more rural community, but if it's costing you just as much to build there as it is in inner city municipality, you just got to weigh the pros and cons of that build, because like you said, prices, even lumber we thought was only going to go up, and then round about the fall it was going to come down, and it's still rising, and we're
It's
heading into the spring full force.
Yeah, it's the because I work with so many builders, the cost for infrastructure and then the additional extra money for the lumber and everything, it is making the prices go up, 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 a lot higher than we ever thought we would see. But I would look for location first, and then if a lot of people now are buying older homes in a lot or an area they like, and they're tearing down the homes, or they're just renovating those homes and adding additions and everything like that. So I would say location first is it would be my prime target. And if you can't find the lot, then maybe look for an older home that could be torn down or renovated. And then, we're going further and further out because Charlotte is growing so rapidly. The land is getting eaten up as quickly as it could possibly get eaten up, and then everything is starting to go out. Where we thought like Salisbury was like forever to get to, now it's getting closer because they're building out in between the municipalities and stuff like that. So I don't know that I have a great answer for that question, other than find the area you want to live in first, and then start looking for the land or the lot. There's one thing I'll mention that people don't often think of is look for vacant lots in neighborhoods. Like maybe years ago, someone bought an extra lot to have a bigger lot, and it's just been there and no one really pays it any attention. a lot of times you can get whoever owns that to sell that lot. Maybe they need cash. Maybe they're in a situation where they don't want to mess with cutting it anymore or whatever. And so often if you just start looking in neighborhoods that you really like, you may be able to find an extra lot in there that no one ever built on. And that's how I started. I just drive around and look for vacant lots. So,
and reach out to the owners. So you used to cold call, honey. That didn't scare
I still
you?
do. I still cold call off every day, every single day. I have to look, you know, I found a couple of good apps online that actually give me cell phone numbers. So, which was very hard when you're doing this because people had landlines all the time when I first started. But now that people have cells, they don't have landlines. And so if you don't have a way to find their cell number, it's almost impossible to get in touch with them if they don't answer your letter. So I still send out letters. I still call people, cold call them, and get good response. You know, as long as you're nice, you know, people are, in general, they're pretty nice to you. So still.
Do you go after any for sale by owners?
Pardon me?
Do you go after any for sale by owners?
Oh, yes. Of course I do. Yeah. If I see a sign on a piece of property, I'll call them right up and, you know, get the information. The good thing about, and I want to mention this to any listeners that you have, and it's a plug, but it's a calling card as well. This is a great book to give to someone, especially if they're maybe not in downtown Charlotte that's selling, but if they're selling in downtown and they're wanting to go out in the country or something like that to get away from this nonsense, this is a great calling card to say, hey, read this, because this will help us when we are looking for that property that you're wanting to find. These are things that you want to consider looking for. And there's something about when you give a gift to someone, they remember that and they want to give it back. So they may give it back in the form of allowing you to work with them. So those are things to consider. So I've been giving my book a lot. I've tried to give out at least 2 or 3 a week to people, and they're just like, wow, this is great, because they don't know something like this exists.
Mm-hmm. You know, I was so glad when you talked about it in the class that we took. I was like, I wrote it down and then I lost my notebook. I was like, where's the notebook with her info? I gotta find the lady from class. And then one day I found the notebook and I was like, yes, Cheryl, I need to know what your book was. And I bought it the same day, and then I called several other realtors that I knew and I told them to buy it as well. I thought it's a great tool, and I'm super, super excited that you came on tonight to talk about it. Cheryl, we're going to kind of wrap up here, but before we wrap up, I want you to tell people how they can get in touch with you. What's your social media handles?
All of that stuff.
all that stuff, yeah.
I'm not out there yet, but I'm starting to slowly put myself out there. I'm still trying to learn the technology.
Well, let's get you out there right now with this one.
But, my website is www.cherylsain.com. You can go on there. You can order the book from there if you like. I've got one blog. I'm starting to work on getting my blogs up there, and I've got some stories on there. Or you can order the book on Amazon or through Barnes & Noble, and it's called 10 Things You Need to Know About Land, or you can Google my name and it comes up. But it's getting some good reviews so far, and I'm in probably, my best guess is about 30 states so far. So all the way out to California. Believe it or not, Californians are buying my book. It's the craziest thing.
I love it. Well, there's still land in California, believe it or not.
Yeah. So it's up in Washington. I've got a lot of people in the New York area are buying my book, which is kind of cool. So it's hitting pretty good. But I'm really grateful that you asked me to do this with you. Anytime, I'll be glad to. Hoping to have a course on it maybe this next year, maybe, I don't know. I'm working on it right now. It's a lot to develop a course. I had no idea until I started getting to it. So, but right now I'm focusing on getting the book out there and letting everybody know about it so that they can learn and they can help others. So,
I'm glad that I was able to help you get your book out there and let people know about it, because like I said, as inventory continues to dwindle. I mean, I do a mid-month market report every mid-month because most people do theirs at the beginning of the month or they do it at the end of the month. I do mine mid-month, and it's called the mid-month market report. And I talk about, you know, what's changed from mid-month last month to mid-month this month.
Really?
Consistently, yes, and consistently. So my YouTube page, Cole's Keys LLC, and it's also on my website, coleskeys.com. But it literally tracks where we're at and all the price points of single family homes and how many is on the market for I do Mecklenburg and York County. Sorry, not Union.
That's
but
okay.
But that's, you know, the major metropolitan, and since we're right here at York County, I just crossed over into South Carolina because I'm licensed in South Carolina. My plan was to do Atlanta, but their statistics is a little bit, whew. So I said, let me stick with North Carolina, South Carolina, and leave it at that.
Well, these are my two favorite states anyway.
So. But yeah, so I give those mid-month market reports, and I let people know. Cheryl, are you on Instagram?
I'm trying to be. I've got a marketing group that is that's really doing a great job, and they get on me about, you know, trying to post more, but it's really difficult to find the time that you need to. I mean, it is so much time involved in marketing yourself and promoting a book and that sort of thing. So I'm just trying to stay, you know, as focused as I can about the education part of it. So it's, you know, right now it's like, do you develop a class or do you push a book, you know? And so I'm trying to.
You do both, Cheryl.
I know.
Come on, woman power. You do both.
I know. I'm working on it. But right now I'm just here to help everybody, and I'm open to questions. I love stories. If you can send me some stories, that would be great. My email is CherylSain@gmail.com. And that's CherylSain@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out to me and call. If I can help you, I'll be glad to. But I'm so grateful that I met you. And I'm very grateful you had me on tonight.
I'm grateful that you were able to be on tonight. I'm grateful that I was able to meet you. I specifically had some clients who are looking for land, and I really wanted to get them on so that they could hear it for themselves. That, number one, I ain't lying to them. That was a joke. But just, you know, so that they can hear the info specific to purchasing land, because like I said, inventory is running out. What the next thing to do is to grab whatever land you can get. But one last question for you where it comes to buying land. And I know part of the answer of this question is pertinent upon location. Okay, so I will preference this question with, I know that part of the answer is location, but is it better to just buy and hold with the market being the way that it is when it comes to land, or buy and try to build something and get it sold with homes flying off the market as fast as they are?
You know, if the numbers work and it makes sense, yeah, of course, go ahead and get it. If you can find a builder that has time to do it. I've got a client, they bought a lot back in, last year. And their builder still hasn't had time to start their house yet because he's so far behind from, you know, other people, you know, that are in front of them to get their house built. And, you know, so they're going to be renting for a while, a lot longer than they anticipated. So I would say if you can, you know, it depends on the situation. If you're in a situation where you found the lot of your dreams and you want to hold on to it until the price of lumber goes down, I would definitely do that. If it's something you're going to live in, if it's something you're going to, you know, buy and build and sell, you know, it's a hot market right now, but it's going to cost a lot to do it because you're going to pay more for the land. You're going to pay more for getting the house built. You can sell it for more. So is it worth it? You just got to run the numbers and just weigh everything out, the cost of everything to do it, the timing it takes. Is this market going to hold? You know, I mean, that's a big question I have. Is the market going to hold? Because there's so many, I've been listening to some stuff online about all the forbearance and, you know, people not paying their mortgages and their taxes are in those mortgages. So they're not paying taxes too. So I don't know.
And
I'm not
I know
that smart.
I said one last question, but your answer prompted another question, and it's how does one go about getting the financing for land? Because a lot of lenders won't finance below
Oh, that's
50,000.
true. That's true. It is very hard to find someone that will lend for land unless you put a certain amount down. There's a few that will, but you have to have a chunk of money typically to put down on the land before they'll finance it. But if you're financing the land and a home on the land, then that's a lot easier. So you can do that.
Do you have any lender partners you can recommend to our viewers?
Not because I work mostly with larger builders and
Oh,
developers.
yeah.
They're hedge funds and they're
Yeah.
financed and all that stuff. So I don't really have to do that part. I mainly am just looking for the land for them to buy, and I do my due diligence. I check for the the water and sewer locations and the zoning and what's the land look like. Are there any current surveys? And I get them enough because they're going to put it into this machine and they're going to run all their numbers internally. But I give them enough information to get going on it. But it's golly, it's as soon as something comes on the market, man, it's zapped up just like that. Even in land, large tracts of land. So
Yeah.
it's not just houses. So
It's not. Again, I've worked with several clients that are looking for land. I have one that's looking for very, very large tracts of land. And every time I find one and we start doing our research, and it's under contract because someone had already been looking at it at least a month before we came across it, doing that same research. So things are moving quickly. But again, we are winding up here at the end, and I want to be conscious of people's time. I want to be conscious of your time, Cheryl. I do want to, again, thank you again so much for joining us tonight on Ask an Agent. We do this every week. I would say every Tuesday and Thursday, but next week we're actually on Tuesday and Wednesday. So we definitely do this every week. Look out for when we're posting on when we're doing it. This week, Thursday, we will be speaking with an underwriter, okay? So for those of you that get mad at your loan officer because your loan officer keeps asking you for things, we're going to have an underwriter to explain what's going on there. And again, the underwriter is going to be looking at it from a buying and a selling perspective. So whether you're a buyer or a seller, you need to be on this Thursday. Again, Cheryl, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.